Americans are having fewer babies. They told us why. Women have more options for one, but a new poll shows that financial insecurity is altering a generation's choices. So not only are you being fed a whole bunch of really, really awful, soyed up food, not only are you being fed a whole bunch of awful propaganda through the television, the entire education system has been weaponized against your fertility as well. Oh, that guy, Tristan, he says eat meat, make families. That's so bad for the environment. Humans bad, guys. Humans are bad. I watch TV. I hang out on the Twitter. I see the verified accounts telling us people bad, babies bad. What is this Tristan guy talking about? He must be one of those conspiracy theorists saying that big government, big media, big agriculture doesn't want us to breed, that they don't want us to have children. That's crazy talk. All right, so the New York Times, Americans are having fewer babies. They told us why. Now remember, these are not headlines written about reality. These are taglines, these are bylines, these are headlines written to shape your reality. Yes, to a certain extent, they have to reflect the environment around you to be actually accepted, right? For the propaganda to actually enter into your mind, into your subconscious and program you, it's got to have some connection with reality because people are intelligent, right? People aren't just idiots. That's why it takes highly advanced techniques to really drill this into your consciousness. And it's a generational approach. It's a generational approach to social engineering. This is a multi-generational approach that's being taken. Financial insecurity is altering a generation's choices. So your perception of financial insecurity, which is based in what? The market, right? The market. Now, you guys know who Thomas Malthus was? Sir Thomas Malthus. Malthus was an Anglican. He was one of the British elite, one of the British scientific elite. I believe he was a member of the Royal Society as well. And Malthus came up with these kooky theories that there aren't enough resources for all the people on the planet, and that really soon, and this was in like the late 1800s, right? That very, very soon, we're not going to be able to feed the population. How did he know this? Well, he put fruit flies in a jar, and when the fruit fly population reached a certain point, they would all die off because eventually they would run out of food and resources to sustain their life in a jar. Therefore, we must limit human population and control human breeding. He made all sorts of crazy suggestions on how to limit population as well. Some of those being moving poor populations next to swamps and marshes so that they would die off slowly, so that their immune systems would be taxed by disease. All right, so this is something that my buddy Jay Dyer talked about on one of his recent streams. I'm not sure which one. Maybe it was on Boiler Room recently. And Jay mentioned Malthus actually making that proposal. And these aren't even the kookiest ideas that are coming out of some of these sick psychopaths that are telling you not to breed, right? Telling you that it's not okay to have children, that it's bad. Because there's not enough resources, because the fruit flies couldn't live in the jar for very long, guys. Those fruit flies couldn't live in that jar very long. So, we get told as the plebs, right? As we get told that meat is bad for the planet, that everything we need to sustain our life and every single byproduct of our life is the worst thing in the world. And the millennial generation was told that growing up. We were told this in the schools. It was kind of on the down low when I was a kid, right? The engineering wasn't that strong, but the shit that these kids are getting taught now are absolutely insane. So, you're given this schizophrenic, contradictory ideology that humans are bad, right? That might makes right. That there's no objective right or wrong, that it's all cultural relevance, it's all moral relativism. And essentially you're given a might makes right philosophy, social Darwinism. Interesting fact, do you guys know that the Satanic Bible is basically a plagiarism of a book from, it was, I think, in the 1920s, or maybe it was like 1913, a book called Might Makes Right. And this was a book just about social Darwinism as a philosophy. The grand narrative of Darwinism, ultimately teaching that we was monkeys, you as beasts, and non-human animals need to be treated with dignity. None of these terms, which they can even define, dignity, right? They're giving you a grand narrative and then giving you a morality structure built around this false grand narrative of might makes right, from goo to shrew to monkey to you to God, to AI, transcendent God, right? They tell you there's no God, there's no creator, there's nothing outside of your own mind. It's all just solipsism, right? You're given this entire false reality, right? As they push plant-based diets on you. They push plant-based diets on you. And now, as they're giving animals human rights, aka humans animal rights, as they do this, you get told that having families is oppressive and expensive, right? It robs us millennials of the valuable time we could be spending earning money to pay carbon taxes to the people who print money and then convince us not to have babies. Jacob knows about Anton LaVey. So all you dummies out there promoting vampirism, thinking it's all cute, promoting satanic philosophy, might makes right, you're promoting the same philosophy, the exact same philosophy that the system wants you to promote. You're pushing their ideology. You're vindicating it. And you think you're rebelling by promoting this degeneracy, by promoting vampirism, by promoting moral relativism. You're falling right into the trap. So anyways, guys, Ecoscience, Population, Resources, Environment by Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich was the Chicken Little of the 70s. He was Al Gore version. He was the beta test Al Gore. This is a textbook. It was published in, was it 1979? This book used to be really expensive. You can find some cheaper used copies now. Ecoscience. It's a big, thick tome, big textbook. Population, Resources, Environment. Essentially all about how to reduce population and how to control all the resources. And how to completely control the entire terrain of the environment. So many of the suggestions in here, that essentially it's about census of all life, right? Census of all life on this planet. And there's an entire section on methods to reduce the human population. And the methods that are actually suggested by Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich, I mean, this is not just some kook, right? Paul Ehrlich is one of the major proponents of depopulation since the 1970s. He would be on all the popular talk shows, all the radio shows, and the late night TV shows, Johnny Carson stuff. Paul Ehrlich would come on and talk about the population bomb. The population bomb. Right? The assault on the planet by all these nasty humans having nasty human babies. Bad, naughty human babies. So this is Paul Ehrlich. Also John P. Holdren. He was Obama's White House science czar back in 2008. And in this book, they openly write about putting sterilants in the water to reduce fertility rates. They openly talk about having forced sterilization of the populace and then having permits granted to people by governments to have babies. Now, we already see this being introduced in China. Google, highly tied in. Google, and YouTube, owned by Google. Also, they own 23andMe. Same people. 23andMe, doing genetic testing for the trendy YouTubers. So the population policies chapter starts out with a quote from Mao. Let's see if I can get on the camera there. Quote from Mao. Of all things, people are the most precious. So a nice little tongue-in-cheek, double entendre stuff going on there. So what do we have to do? We have to reduce the rate of growth of the population, although not necessarily to zero. That's option 1. Option 2, stabilize the rise of the population. That is to achieve a zero rate of growth. Let's stop the growth of the population, right? Number 3, achieve a negative rate of growth in order to reduce the size of the population. Any set of programs that is to be successful in alleviating the set of problems described in the foregoing chapters must include measures to control the growth of the human population. The potential goals of such measures in order of possible achievement are: 1, reduce the rate of the growth of population, although not necessarily to zero. 2, stabilize the size of the population. That is, achieve a zero rate of growth. Number 3, achieve a negative rate of growth in order to reduce the size of the population. So number 1's the easiest. Number 2, a little bit harder. Number 3, it's a little bit harder. Negative growth. How do you achieve a negative growth of population? Well, like Ben Goertzel said on the Joe Rogan podcast, it's all just arrangements of molecules, man. It's all just arrangements of molecules. People are just arrangements of molecules. There's no God, man, but we're going to make a God. We're going to make an AI God and worship it, man. All right. So, there's much less agreement as to how far and how fast population limitation should proceed. Acceptance of the first goal listed above requires only that one recognize the obvious adverse consequences of rapid population growth. For example, dilution of economic progress in less developed countries, and aggravation of environmental and social problems in both developed and less developed countries. Economists and demographers, many of whom will not accept the third goal at all and ascribe no urgency to the second, generally do espouse the first one. So the third one's hard. People don't want to kill everybody. It's really hard to get people to admit that they want to kill everybody publicly. Although these people do it in textbooks. Negative population growth. So many birth control practices have been recorded throughout history. Institutionalized infanticide in the 18th century. It's pretty, they highlighted that. They even gave it a bold box to talk about the, how infanticide. Kill babies. Institutionalized infanticide. Infanticide, which is viewed with horror today by prosperous people in industrialized societies, has probably always been practiced by societies lacking effective contraceptive methods. It was a rather common practice among the ancient Greeks, and Chinese and Japanese are known to have used it for centuries, especially in times of famine. In agrarian, warlike societies, female infanticide has often been practiced to provide a greater proportion of men, or to consolidate upper classes. Only a century or two ago, infanticide was widely practiced in Europe, in an institutionalized, although socially disapproved system, sometimes called baby farming. Baby farming. So, these are the people writing policy. These are the people being consulted by these people writing policy as well. This is madness, right? This is who has been programming the millennial generation. Openly talking about infanticide. Well, it was normal a few hundred years ago. There's tribes in Africa that still eat their firstborn child. And just like Richard Dawkins said, we must get rid of the taboo around cannibalism. This old taboo by all these religious nutcases about cannibalism and drinking human blood. Drinking adrenalized human baby blood. These people are sick. Right? This is who's programming the millennials. Not to have children, not to have baby. And eat soy. Eat soy, guys. Meat is bad. Soy is good. Make your soy faces. Hi. Hi. Hashtag cute boy. Hashtag 30-year-old boy. Soy face. So these are people who are so sick and so demented that they actually believe that it's their right to say how many people should inhabit this earth, how many people should be alive. They want to take a census of life. They tell you that your exhalations, that breathing, that being alive is evil. I think you exhale less CO2 when you exhale like this. Less CO2 that way. Take a picture. Hi, rootless. Hi, vasectomies. So, what I was trying to find is how they actually talk about economic stress being a way to reduce population growth. The growth of the women's liberation movement in the U.S. since 1965 has almost certainly been another important influence on attitudes and thus on birth rates. Through its emphasis on opportunities for women, opportunities for women to go work for another woman's man. Oh, they didn't put that part in. I added that part in, you guys. The growth of the women's liberation movement in the U.S. since 1965 has almost certainly been another important influence on attitudes, through its emphasis on opportunities for women to fulfill themselves in roles other than womanhood. Motherhood, rather. That was a Freudian slip. I mean, Freud being another one of these like total degenerates whose philosophy has been a part of this degradation of society. So, the growth of the women's liberation movement will give women other opportunities other than being mothers. Other opportunities like working for Facebook, or working for Netflix, or working for Google, or working some other job in Silicon Valley. The establishment of low-cost daycare centers for children and tax reduction for the cost of childcare and household work was another suggestion. So here's another thing we saw with the millennials is, going to daycare. Right, everybody's parents both going to work. The breakup of the family unit causing you to be put in daycare, to be raised by people who don't give a shit about you. Right, women get told that being a mom is terribly oppressive, that you don't have any fun, that you don't get to do anything good now. You don't get to have any fun when you're a mom. Get a cat instead. Jessica Boer, 26, kissing her cat Kip at her home in Portage, Michigan. Like an increasing number of key people in her generation, she does not plan to have children. Now we know we have a choice, she said. Great. So, essentially through propaganda, many people have just been convinced that having babies is bad. Right? Through people's inherent greed, through people's inherent insecurity, they're easily manipulated into this nonsense. Oh, it's my choice. It's a choice. My choice not to have kids. It was always a choice. There's a choice whether to be promiscuous or not. There's a choice whether to have kids or not. This is nothing new. It's just been drilled into your head what your choice should be, what the right choice to make is. Because the fertility subtly shapes many major issues of the day, including immigration, education, housing, and labor supply, the social safety net and support for working families. There's a lot of concern about why today's young adults aren't having as many children. This has all been studied, though, guys. This has all been studied. That when you give the pill and promiscuity and you promote hypersexuality, you destroy the family. You promote narcissism, hypersexuality, nomadism, and everybody's out there cruising around. Everybody wants to be on YouTube and traveling, not have kids. I'm not going to have kids. I just can't find... There's no man that's, like, good enough for me. I'm 35 years old. I weigh 190 pounds. I work at Facebook. Yeah, I'm trans. And there's no man that's good enough for me. That's why I haven't settled down yet. It's not because I have totally unrealistic expectations of life, and I'm totally past my prime, and I've wasted all my good years chasing money and paying off my student loans and being stressed about money and trying to get attention from my dad. I hate you, Dad. That's not why. It's because there's no man that's good enough for me. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. It's like, oh, just guys don't seem to like purple-haired girls for some reason. But I was born this way. No, and then the male options that they have are just a bunch of soy boys who will stand up for nothing, including themselves and their own families. Right? I mean, you're taught from a young age in schools. You're raised in these schools where you're taught to sit down, shut up, and listen to lies that are taught to you and dictated to you by a state. You got state mandated education. And guess what? You got the school lunch program. You get to eat Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and Arby's sandwiches when you go to lunch. Right? Mommy and daddy, they don't have time to make you food anymore. You're not going to make your own food. And bring your own lunch to school. You eat the school lunch, which is just brought to you by massive corporations. I mean, I grew up in California. We literally had Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Arby's. And like Hostess things that you could get the lady to microwave for you. Like I would get I would have microwaved honey buns. And just the shittiest pizza you could ever imagine. There was no meat. It was all, the Arby's sandwiches had meat and cheese. It's just terrible. I'm trying to find, there's a great section on, in this book, Ecoscience. There's a great passage on economic instability and depressions as a way to keep people from having babies and decrease population. So economic insecurity, a major tool for decreasing population growth. And the New York Times knows this. This has been studied. Humans' reaction to different stimulus in different environments has been studied like lab rats. The behaviorist sciences, the so-called science of behaviorism, which assumes that there's no soul, there's no rational mind, there's no reason to even believe that people have thoughts. There are only reactions to external stimulus. And that's how these people see you, like lab rats. And that's how they've treated the millennials. They've given us school. They've given you public education. They've given you public education food. You've been freaking eating Disney food since you're children. We've been fed lies. We've been fed false reality. And we've been fed fake food. You've been fed pharmaceutical drugs as the solution to this. And then you get fed false countercultures in rebellion to this, like veganism. False countercultures. Like sex, drugs, and rock and roll was given to the boomers. The program is more advanced in the millennials. You still have sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You had Britney Spears also. You had the hypersexualization of a generation, just like they did to the baby boomers. Except it's more advanced. And people will accept more degeneration. Because it's been that much longer that we've been programmed to think that it's normal to be watching pornography 24 hours a day. That we believe it's normal for young girls to be sexualized and children to be sexualized on Disney television shows and then turned into prostitutes, like Miley Cyrus. These poor abused children. Or dudes like Terry Richardson are out there preying on these little girls. Openly. And being applauded for it. And then you get false countercultures. How are you going to rebel? Oh, don't go take the drugs. Don't go do a bunch of Molly and Coke, you guys. Don't do it. Here's billions of dollars of propaganda selling you Molly and Coke through rap music. But don't go do the drugs. Because then you might end up in the private prisons. Right? You go to the university. What's the counterculture? It's the drugs again. Right? And now it's not just acid. You're not just dropping acid. Not just dosing up on acid now. Smoking some DMT. You've got designer drugs. You've got all these research chemicals. 2CT7, 2CB, 2CI, bromofly. Or you have veganism, right? Rebel by doing exactly what Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies want you to do, by buying into a consumer ideology, by creating a consumer out of you, by creating a whole consumer generation. The entire millennial generation is easily divided up into little sects that can just be marketed to. Using advanced AI systems, watching the flow of language and your behavior online, because remember, they believe in behaviors and the people that are programming this AI. And this is what we're given. That's why they give that to us, because we will go out and reenact the things that we've seen. They promote vampire culture in Hollywood. And they openly promote cannibalism on television. Richard Dawkins trying to normalize cannibalism. Making drinking human blood sexy with Twilight. All the cute little idiot teens. Oh, it's cute little vampires. They drink blood of humans in rituals, and they drink menstrual blood, and it gives them powers. But they're still so sweet and cute and handsome. And he has chiseled abs. It's ridiculous. You got dehumanizing culture that's feeding you a dehumanizing diet of soylent slop, telling you that it's not okay to eat animals, while promoting cannibalism. You had a CNN reporter ate human brains on national television. You guys don't believe me? CNN reporter eats brains. CNN reporter eats human brains on TV. Oh, there was backlash after CNN presenter eats human brain on TV. But don't be a bigot, guys. This was a nomadic religious sect. The Agori worship the Hindu deity Shiva, but reject many of the tenets of Hinduism and practice a range of unusual ceremonies, including cannibalism. While staying with the Agori, Aslan drank alcohol from a human skull, then ate a cooked piece of brain. He later wrote on Facebook, "Want to know what a dead guy's brain tastes like? Charcoal. It was burnt to a crisp." Yeah. Reza Aslan. He's like a Gen Xer. But he's living that millennial life. He's traveling. He's eating foods. He's taking selfies. He's like, "Hey, Mom, here's a human brain. Soy face. Human brain." Super edgy, godless. But this is real. Like this people are really they're promoting this. What do we do? What can we do? What can we do? Carl Walmo says, survey says drink menstrual blood. Yeah, exactly. You guys can, all you little dorks out there who want to go play your little games, you guys can go promote your drinking menstrual blood and your vampirism. But we're here to promote families and traditional values and actually doing something about this. So this is why first of all, we moved to a rural area, an area where other people think like us. That area happened to be in another country on another continent, but you could still do a similar thing without having to move too far off of where you're at. So moving into rural areas, actually getting connected to your local community, living in an area where your local community, Fura Divinus, what's up, lady? Throwing $20, 19.99. Thank you, Fiora Divinus. I can't believe my audience. I really feel super fortunate, super blessed to have certain people here in the audience whose names I see. I love it. Thank you. Some of these names popping up here, I see you guys consistently. You guys elevate me too. Right? Because just getting up here and talking about this stuff, it does open you up to a lot of criticism, to a lot of haters. Everyone's a hater who disagrees. No, but people don't like to hear this. There's nothing that's more hated than the truth. So you can do things like moving to a rural area, have children, stop chasing money and buying into the social engineering nonsense. And you can move to an area where your local community actually still does have control of resources. There are areas like that. If these vegans came into this town, if they came into any town in Ecuador, these vegans that you see online, LARPing about, getting rid of your ability to actually eat meat, if any of these people came into one of these communities and started trying to spread their nonsense, they would be shunned and kicked the fuck out of here. And there are many, and most communities in the real world, well, most small towns, and I'm not talking about the big socially engineered cities, these people couldn't be spreading all this propaganda. They eat meat bad, rural people bad. They could not. They couldn't. They would be laughed out, they would be shunned, or they would be reprimanded and shamed until they corrected themselves and quit being little fucking doofuses. Yin Yang, what's up, dude? Thanks, Yin Yang. The truth sets you free. And yeah, exactly. Where does the truth come from? The truth doesn't come from me. I don't make up the truth. You don't make up the truth. Now, there's no perfect place to live, but you can live in rural areas where you know your neighbors and where you know if something were to happen, that they are not pussies, that they would stand with you, right? Who would you rather have as a neighbor? Let's think. Dr. Sean Baker or Happy Healthy Vegan? Who'd you rather have as a neighbor? Carnivore. Raises his own goats. Lives off the land. Works with his hands. Or Goji Man. Or Vegan Gains.